The sun had barely begun its climb over the jagged mountains of the Middle East, casting a golden glow over the desert sands that stretched endlessly below. In the air above, the faint roar of jet engines began to pierce the dawn silence, a sound that would soon be synonymous with sheer dominance. The F-16 Falcon, often dubbed the Viper by pilots for its deadly agility and unrelenting precision, sliced through the morning sky with a grace that belied its lethal purpose. These were not ordinary flights. Today, they were hunters in the purest sense, poised against the so-called Hawks, enemy aircraft that prided themselves on numbers and speed, but whose pilots would soon learn that raw firepower without discipline was nothing against calculated aggression. As the first radar blips appeared on the Falcon's sophisticated display systems, the tension in the cockpit was palpable. Pilots checked and rechecked their systems, fingers brushing lightly over the triggers, each knowing that the sky above was about to become a battlefield where only one species of bird could dominate. Below, scattered villages remained oblivious to the deadly ballet above, unaware that the air would soon thicken, with the hum of afterburners and the flash of missile trails cutting through the horizon. In this arena, there was no room for hesitation. The F-16s, sleek and deadly, moved as one, weaving through invisible corridors in the sky, engines screaming as they maneuvered into their strike positions. Each Falcon's radar flickered with incoming contacts. The Hawks, aggressive yet predictable, their movements betraying overconfidence. The first exchanges were subtle. A missile would flare in the distance, almost like a firework, a warning of the chaos about to unfold. But the Falcons were trained to be relentless, to think 2 steps ahead, and every evasive maneuver by the Hawks was met with counter-precision that seemed almost preternatural. The dance began in earnest as the first dogfight erupted. The sky became a blur of motion, metal streaking against the backdrop of clouds and sunlight. The Hawks tried to coordinate, banking and turning with speed, but the Falcons anticipated every maneuver, cutting across their paths, gaining angles that allowed for instant missile lock-ons. Within minutes, the airspace that had seemed vast now felt claustrophobic, a chamber of relentless hunting, where a single mistake could be fatal. The pilots' voices over the radio were calm, almost clinical, but every tone carried the weight of life-or-death decisions. "Target on your 6, one called. Another responded. "Fox 2, signaling a heat-seeking missile locked and fired. In an instant, the lead Hawk spiraled out of control, smoke trailing, a stark contrast to the precision of the Falcons that already moved toward the next target. It was a cascade, almost poetic in its ruthlessness, each Hawk falling as if nature itself had decided to cull the weak, leaving only the apex predator in the sky. The F-16s coordinated with an elegance that masked their lethality. One Falcon would dive toward a Hawk, forcing it into a defensive turn, while another would swoop in from above, missiles ready, guns hot, cutting down escape routes with surgical precision. The Hawks tried desperate maneuvers, looping and rolling, but their lack of advanced avionics and cohesive tactical training was painfully evident. In this brutal symphony of speed and firepower, technology met instinct, training met courage, and the Falcons, with their supersonic capabilities and unparalleled versatility, emerged as the embodiment of controlled chaos. Below, the radar operators on the ground could barely keep up with the unfolding carnage. Blips disappeared one by one, the pattern unmistakable. The Hawks were being methodically eradicated. By mid-morning, the sky, once dotted with enemy craft, had become eerily quiet, save for the triumphant roar of the Falcons cutting through the thin clouds above. Yet, even as the air cleared, the pilots knew better than to relax. Every sortie carried risk. Every dogfight left scars not just on machines, but on the psyche of those who had lived through the ordeal. The Falcons had eaten the Hawks for breakfast, but the lesson lingered. Dominance required constant vigilance, mastery of every system, every angle, every second. As they turned back toward their base, engines throttling down, the pilots shared glances that said more than words ever could, a mix of relief, pride, and an unspoken understanding of the razor-thin line between hunter and hunted in the unforgiving theater of aerial combat. This is part 1, building tension, establishing characters, and showing aerial supremacy. It's cinematic, long form, and retains attention with immersive details. The aftermath of the engagement was almost surreal. As the Falcons banked and streaked across the horizon, the remnants of the Hawks Formations were nothing more than smudges of smoke and broken metal, drifting aimlessly against the blue canvas of the sky. Yet, even in victory, there was no time for celebration. Every Falcon pilot was acutely aware that one misstep could turn the hunter into prey. The lessons of the dogfight were etched into every fiber of their being, the razor-sharp timing, the anticipation of the enemy's instincts, and the flawless execution of tactics that transformed a machine into an extension of thought. In the debriefing that followed, data from each aircraft's systems was pored over meticulously. Missile trajectories, evasive maneuvers, radar coverage, and split-second decisions were analyzed and dissected, revealing how a handful of expertly flown Falcons had dismantled an entire squadron of overconfident Hawks. But beyond the technical mastery, the story was one of human endurance, of courage tempered by discipline. Pilots recounted moments of split-second decision-making where instinct and training collided, producing outcomes that seemed almost impossible. A missile fired from an angle no one thought achievable, a turn executed just in time to avoid disaster, a formation perfectly maintained under extreme stress. There was awe in the room, respect for each individual's ability to remain composed while commanding machines, capable of near-fatal destruction. Yet there was also humility. The Falcon's triumph was not a fluke. It was the product of countless hours in simulators, endless drills, and a mindset that demanded not just victory, but mastery over oneself. Back in the air, the sun had climbed higher, and the desert below seemed almost indifferent to the theater that had unfolded above. The Falcons, still climbing toward cruising altitude, became silhouettes against the brightening sky, symbols of supremacy forged in speed, strategy, and precision. The narrative of that morning would ripple through military circles for years to come, studied and dissected as an example of air superiority achieved not through sheer numbers but through planning, discipline, and the courage to act decisively under pressure. And for those who watched from afar, whether through radar screens or from the edge of a distant valley, the lesson was unmistakable. In the modern skies, dominance is earned, and the apex predator does not simply survive, it shapes the battlefield, defines the rules, and leaves no doubt as to who reigns supreme. As the Falcons finally returned to base, engines cooling, the pilots carried more than the satisfaction of victory. They carried the weight of responsibility, the knowledge that the next mission would demand even more, and the quiet pride that comes from mastering the unforgiving art of aerial combat. The sun began to set behind the mountains, painting the sky with streaks of crimson and gold, and in that moment the Falcons, silent now but ever vigilant, had not just flown, they had written a legend, one that would be remembered not for the numbers, not for the firepower, but for the sheer audacity and skill that allowed a few to dominate many, to turn a battlefield into a showcase of calculated excellence, and to remind the world that in the skies, as on earth, precision, courage, and strategy always prevail. The story of that morning, the day when F-16 Falcons truly ate Hawks for breakfast, was a tale of speed, firepower, and unrelenting mastery. It was a testament to what happens when technology meets skill, when instinct meets discipline, and when the apex predator asserts its place, leaving an indelible mark on the skies and in the annals of aerial warfare. And as the night fell, the legend settled in the minds of those who would tell it again and again, a reminder that in the theater of air combat, supremacy is not given, it is earned, one precise maneuver at a time. Even after the dust of the engagement had settled and the Falcons had returned to base, the sky remained a silent witness to the morning's chaos, almost as if it remembered every maneuver, every missile, every calculated turn. In the debriefing room, the pilots leaned back, exhausted yet buzzing with adrenaline, recounting in painstaking detail the microseconds that had defined life or death. It wasn't just the victory over the Hawks. It was the relentless precision, the ability to read the enemy like an open book, and the seamless coordination between man and machine that had turned the skies into a canvas of controlled destruction. Every pilot spoke of moments that had tested their nerves, the split-second decision to pull up at the last possible instant to avoid being locked onto, the nerve-wracking seconds before a missile found its mark, and the invisible mental calculations required to stay 2 steps ahead in a game where hesitation meant annihilation. Outside, the desert shimmered under the midday sun, the hum of aircraft long gone, replaced by the whisper of wind over sand. Yet in the minds of the pilots, the air remained alive, charged with the memory of smoke trails, radar blips, and the near-tangible fear of those they had hunted. For some, it was awe-inspiring. For others, humbling. They understood that technology alone had not won the day. Their own discipline, the courage to act decisively under immense pressure, and the trust in one another had turned the odds in their favor. Analysts reviewing the flight data noted patterns that seemed almost choreographed, movements so precise that it was easy to forget the human element behind the joystick. The Falcons had dominated. Yes, but it was mastery over themselves and the environment that had truly set them apart. The story of this sortie would soon become a benchmark for aerial combat training. Every sharp bank, every sudden acceleration, every missile trajectory meticulously studied and integrated into doctrine for generations of pilots to come. Beyond the tactical lessons, there was the psychological impact. Stories of the day spread quickly through intelligence channels and military circles, leaving opponents with a sobering reality check. Numerical superiority could not overcome precision, skill, and audacity, and within the squadron, a quiet camaraderie emerged. Born from shared adrenaline, shared danger, and shared triumph, it was a bond that no simulator could replicate, a trust forged in fire and steel, in the relentless pursuit of aerial dominance. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the tarmac, the Falcons sat on the runway like silent predators at rest, engines cooled but hearts still racing with the memory of the hunt. This battle, though brief in minutes, had expanded into hours in their minds, a mosaic of strategy, instinct, and sheer human determination. And perhaps most importantly, it left a legacy, a story that would outlive the flight logs and radar charts, one that would echo in the minds of all who sought to conquer the skies. For the Falcons, the lesson was clear. Supremacy is never granted. It is earned through relentless preparation, courage under pressure, and the unyielding will to strike decisively when the moment arrives. They had eaten the hawks for breakfast, yes, but the true victory was intangible, the mastery of themselves, their machines, and the invisible, unforgiving domain of the sky. And that, more than any tally of enemy craft destroyed, was the mark of legends forged in the air. As night fell over the desert, the sky transformed into a canvas of deep indigo, stars piercing the darkness like distant beacons, indifferent yet eternal witnesses to the events that had unfolded. The Falcons rested on the tarmac, their sleek forms bathed in the soft glow of floodlights. Engines silent now, but memories of the hunt still echoing in every cockpit. Inside, the pilots reflected not just on the tactical victory, but on the intangible lessons the sky had imparted. Each maneuver, each missile fired, each evasive turn had not only demonstrated technical prowess, but had also illuminated a deeper truth about human capability. That instinct, courage, and relentless focus, when combined with technology, create a force far greater than the sum of its parts. The Hawks, though vanquished, had served as the catalyst for this revelation, a reminder that every opponent, no matter how numerous or aggressive, presents an opportunity to prove mastery, resilience, and strategy. In quiet moments, pilots revisited the mental choreography of the dogfight, tracing lines of motion in their minds, replaying split-second decisions, and understanding how discipline under extreme pressure had separated survival from destruction. There was a strange serenity in this reflection, a respect for the invisible rules of aerial combat, where every action provokes a reaction and every decision ripples across the theater of war. Beyond the tactical brilliance, the sortie left a lasting psychological imprint. The Falcons had not only dominated the Hawks, but had redefined the concept of aerial supremacy, proving that precision, preparation, and unyielding focus were far more decisive than sheer numbers. Ground crews whispered among themselves, recounting tales of maneuvers that defied expectation, of missiles that hit targets seemingly out of impossible angles, and of pilots who had flown not just with skill, but with an almost instinctual connection to the machines they commanded. For the squadron, this mission became more than a victory. It became a legend, a shared memory that would define their careers and inspire every trainee who would follow in their path. And as the night deepened, a quiet sense of purpose settled over the airbase. The Falcons had proven their dominance, but the story was not merely about destruction, it was about mastery, about understanding the delicate balance between instinct and intellect, aggression and patience, risk and control. It was a reminder that the apex predator thrives not by chance, but through relentless preparation, unshakable confidence, and an unwavering commitment to precision. The legacy of that morning, the day when F-16 Falcons truly ate hawks for breakfast would echo far beyond radar screens and flight logs. It would become a testament to what happens when human skill meets advanced technology, when courage meets strategy, and when the unyielding will to dominate transforms the sky into a theater of controlled chaos. And for those who witnessed it, whether from the cockpit or the ground, the lesson was clear and unforgettable. In the air, as in life, supremacy is earned, not granted, and legends are forged in moments of precision, courage, and unrelenting focus. As the pilots finally descended from their machines and walked across the tarmac, under the starlight, they carried more than victory. They carried the knowledge that the sky itself recognizes those who have mastered it, and that the story of the Falcons and the Hawks would be told, studied, and remembered for generations to come, a reminder that true dominance is always earned in the crucible of challenge and the relentless pursuit of excellence.